A Fox News guest thinks that poor people ought to be more grateful because it turns out poor people are more wealthy than they realize. Take a look.
You talk about the European culture as a culture of victimhood, and they say that meritocracy doesn't exist. Why are the two axioms important to tell the American story?
Well, because we excel at almost in every quantifiable way possible. We excel economically over Europeans. In Europe, it's a much more docile and pliable population, and they embrace safety over risk most often, and we don't do that here. But we're creating a system that incentivizes people to do that, and that would be a big mistake.
I love this survey that you included in one of your columns, the World Value Survey. 70% of Americans still believe that the poor can escape poverty if they work hard enough. Only 35% of Europeans think that. That's the American spirit.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, people don't realize how wealthy they are. I'll give you a quick example. If Britain was a state, if we invaded Britain and made them a state, they'd be the second poorest state per capita in the United States after Mississippi. We are far more successful than European nations, and I think the writers at the New York Times and elsewhere, they don't realize that, or they try to trick people into believing it's not true.
We're also the kindest, most charitable state. We like to rip on ourselves all the time, but we give more money than many countries' GDP.
Absolutely. An average American gives 7 times as much as the average European. Now, the European will say, hey, you know, we pay a lot in taxes, so that's why we don't give charity. Well, yeah, that's the problem.
Oh, man. So let me just end that last part. So you talked about charity for a second, right? Well, I mean, you know, the problem is that people don't give to charity because they've been taxed. Well, if you have strong social safety nets, you need less charity. So you give less charity because it's not needed. Because actually the government does the things. I know. All right, but okay, there's a lot to go through, a lot more. But let me just also address first, okay, we are the kindest, most charitable state. I mean, look at all the money that we give, which is actually less than 1% of our annual budget we give to other countries. But the kindest, most charitable state. You don't understand. We are very kind. And we give all this money, less than 1% of our budget. Now that's the thing, though. Fox News has contributed to this idea that we are giving like a gigantic part of our budget to in foreign aid to other countries. Now, again, we do give in dollar amounts billions of dollars to other countries. Most of it goes to Israel, which is an already very wealthy country, in order to, you know, help them bomb brown people, the Palestinians. Okay. And so, wait, how does that make us more charitable? How does that make us better? That doesn't make any sense at all. And speaking of that in a different light, how can you say that we're a very kind, charitable state that allows its own citizens to die if they can't afford insulin? You get cancer, hey man, better have a GoFundMe. You want to go to university? You know, if you want to get into medicine, for example, be a doctor or a lawyer, whatever, better get hundreds of thousands of dollars in loans and then pay on them for the next 35 years. This is a problem that a lot of countries in Europe don't have, where they don't have tuition that's incredibly expensive, or they have tuition programs where you can go to school for free. Some countries even offer you a stipend to go to school. They pay you to go to school. Whereas in the opposite, of course, in America, we pay to go to school a very, very large amount of money. But we're so charitable, super, super charitable. You understand how charitable we are. And look, again, as far as, you know, we don't realize how wealthy we actually are. We're not wealthy. We're not. And the government, I'm sorry, is not very charitable when it comes to welfare. For example, during the pandemic, not only did many other countries have universal health care, they also gave their citizens a monthly check in order to stay home. I mean, for in America, we ended up getting about 3 means-tested stimulus checks Two of them means tested. One of them even more heavily means tested under a Democratic administration, by the way, and unemployment benefits that weren't available to certain kinds of workers. While, of course, we gave the rich and corporations billions of dollars with the promise that, oh no, we'll give you all this money if you promise, if you do the honor system, not to fire people. What happened? Well, they took the money and they fired people and they bought back their own stocks. And some people, of course, used this money that was supposed to be for employees on personal things like cars and a Pokemon card. So give me a break. Like seriously, this is what Fox News is talking about. And by the way, this is not factual information that they are giving out on Fox News. Big surprise, right? Now, I've got more stats here. Now, according to quality of life rankings, the United States is actually a solid 20. Now, okay, that's not horrible, but I'm going to give you more information on where we're massively lacking and where we could do a lot better. So now, on these are out of 100, right? These are some of the scores from the Quality of Life Index. So now, out of 100, we get a 7.9 on affordability. We get a 10.3 on income equality, a 10.8 on safety, with all the idiots running around with like unlimited weaponry, and 31.9 on a well-developed public health system. Now, of course, that's likely because of the existence of Medicare and Medicaid, but also not very, very well developed. Now, and that's the thing, though. On public systems, we actually do pretty well. Medicare, Social Security, these are amazing programs that have helped millions of people. And they continue, to be assaulted, even though they're still fairly robust and should be expanded. But here's the thing. If you're wealthy, America is one of the best countries on earth. It's true. But only if you're wealthy. Now, if you're a regular person, if you're a member of the working class, well, you're not doing so well, and it's not the best place on earth. So even if you work your ass off the entire time, you're still very likely to never be able to escape poverty if you were born in poverty. And you'll actually only end up serving to enrich someone else your entire life. And unlike the conservative narrative of, oh, if you work hard, you'll get out of poverty, right? And he referenced, Kilmeade referenced that poll of, oh, well, 70% of Americans believe that if you just work hard, you'll eventually get out of poverty. Well, that's not true. That's not true. Again, you're mostly going to end up, if you're born poor, you're going to stay poor, and you're going to enrich a giant corporation. And so that narrative that, oh, no, see, working people are just working to help poor people be lazy and mooch off the system, that's their narrative. So we should get rid of those safety nets. Not true at all. No, you're much more likely to work for someone who doesn't value labor, the labor that you put in, doesn't pay you fairly, doesn't give you the benefits that you deserve, like healthcare and paid time off and things, vacation time, things like that, and doesn't even treat you half the time as a human being. Well, that's who you're working to enrich. That's who you're working to enrich. And by the way, these corporations understand that they have the executives have a fiduciary responsibility to extract as much profit from you that they can. And so these CEOs, these bosses, well, that's their job. And the entire purpose of a corporation is to make profit. That's it. Make profit for their shareholders. And so, you have that entire system built in America of basically, capitalism. That's what it is. But without strong social safety nets. And so you have these politicians, you have these companies, you have these CEOs, there's rich people who often will kick out the ladder of success behind them. And so it is downright near impossible to become wealthy now unless you're extremely lucky or unless you were already born there. In fact, according to a research paper by the National Bureau of Economic Research, U.S. social mobility actually had fallen by more than 70% in the past half century. There is no social mobility here in the United States anymore. And of course, there are a lot of reasons for that. For one, wages. Wages have barely risen. The federal minimum wage is still $7.25 an hour. Most working class people make what, anywhere from $8 to $11 or $8 to $13 an hour, and that's not very much. That's below middle class. In fact, middle class is considered to be between $45,000 to $140,000 a year. That's considered middle class. $15 an hour, it gets you $30,000 a year. So even if you're making what is being so-called a living wage, which in my opinion is not enough, $15 an hour, it should be more like 22, 23, at least. Well, if you're making that, you're actually way closer to poverty, even though you're considered to be middle class. And again, you have, the cost for food, housing, education, healthcare, energy that have soared. The inflation on these things cost a lot more, but you're still getting a lot less than what you did before. So no, poor people in America are not wealthy. They're not wealthier than they think. No, you still have half the population, this was even before the pandemic, that couldn't afford a $400 emergency. And a $1,000 emergency, forget about it. Forget about it. One surprise medical bill, and you are out. You're done for. You are kicked out of, what is considered to be middle class, and you are broke. Which, by the way, again, $30,000, $45,000 a year, that is not middle class. That is barely hanging on, is what it is. You're barely kind of getting ahead. And so, but the point of them bringing up these talking points is, well, they always do when people start to get a little bit of class consciousness. We've all been, talking about recently the worker strikes going on at, Kaiser, going on at Kellogg, at John Deere. Even the failed union organization attempt in Bessemer, Alabama. All of these different places, you have workers that are finally starting to assert their rights and saying, you know what? These companies, the company that I work for made billions of dollars in profits during the pandemic. They did extremely well, while we haven't seen a pay raise for years. Years. Well, we're fed up. We're tired of it. We deserve fair pay. We want to work. We want to do, the thing that we're supposed to do, but we deserve to get paid a fair wage. We deserve better than what we are being offered. And so whenever this class consciousness comes up, here you got the talking heads on Fox News coming out and saying, no, you're already super wealthy. You should be grateful for living in America where everything is fantastic. Yeah, everything's fantastic for you. Everything's great for you and all the people that you're, in your social class, the people that you talk to. You ever talk to a poor person? You ever talk to a real poor person, somebody who's working class? Never. Never. And that's why you think everything is fantastic. People are noticing that the rich are getting richer and they're not. And so here comes Fox News. And they've done this before. I remember Stuart Varney saying, yeah, poor people, you're not poor if you have a refrigerator. If you have a microwave, you're not poor. Do you know poor people have a flat screen TV? Well, they're not poor. They're not poor. Everything's great. We shouldn't change anything. We should change nothing. Because everything is fantastic the way that it is. It is all the same, part of the same bullshit narrative to stop people from fighting for the things that they deserve. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share with your friends. You can subscribe and help out the channel by becoming a patron. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf, or you can become a channel member as well by hitting the join button below.